Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to Public Announcement Calendar. Start right out with announcement from the Ellie Phillips Memorial Public Library. The Friends of the Ellie Phillips Memorial Public Library will be having a book sale in the Eau Claire Room on Monday, March 14th from 4 to 8 p.m. and on Tuesday, March 15th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Children's books, adult fiction, a wide variety of nonfiction will be available.
Yes, and once again, Fred, we're on here live from the beautiful downtown Ellie Phillips Memorial Library in the basement of the Ellie Phillips Memorial Library.
Yes.
And
good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
It sounds like we're getting a little echo, Fred. I know we're down in the bowels of the library. It's almost like a cave down here anyway, but hopefully they'll get that corrected. Once again, Fred, this is the Cow Report.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to check to see if you're on the ball.
Wait.
All right, and with me today, as usual, is our exhausted ruler, Fred C. Stafford.
Fred F. Stafford.
Commander for 2 years in the post number 254.
Oh. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
All right, and he was in the Department of New York. And once again, our exhausted ruler, Fred C. Stafford. Glad to have you with us tonight, Fred. Or should I say this afternoon?
This afternoon.
Okay.
It'll be night soon enough, Chuck.
All right, well, and as usual, Fred, in the control room, we have Chris and Cliff Economaki,
I didn't see them.
Siamese twins of engineering.
They must have been hiding.
They're hard at work in there. In the other room, they're building an addition on back there in the engineering room, Fred. So they're hard at work at many different jobs here at Public Access for Chris and Cliff Economaki.
Yes.
And one of these days I'll tell the story about
Yes. Again?
their miraculous birth.
Not again.
Yeah. Okay, Fred, we got a lot to talk about today. And I know you and I discussed before the show a little bit about one of the things that about healthcare and the healthcare system first.
Yes.
And about prevention.
Prevention. That's the name of a magazine.
And you were talking about how they build dams instead of just turning off the faucet.
Right.
Would you like to tell the viewers about that?
Well, God and nature put into our food when it was grown vitamins and minerals and other things that our body requires. Man, in his infinite wisdom, so he can keep it in the package on the shelf for longer periods of time, takes out those life-giving elements. We feed it to the cattle, who need them too, and we put it in vitamin capsules and tablets. So the very thing that we need is taken out of much of the food that is processed by man. Now, for example, there are 26 vitamins and minerals in whole wheat. Well, in order to get that beautiful white color, we take all those things out, including the fiber or the bran, and that goes to the cattle, or you have to buy it extra in the store. Now, many people never buy those things, so we have all kinds of ailments as a result.
So we're taking the best part of the wheat and we feed it to the cattle.
That's right. The best part, it's the white flour itself cannot sustain life. And you'll find that out if you feed an animal that for any length of time. For example, a dog won't last 6 months eating white flour products only.
I know there's been studies done, Fred, where animals have been fed whole wheat flour and this bleach stuff, and they die.
Well, I was in the Coast Guard at Wildwood Naval Air Station in 1944-45 and left there in 46 in January. And in that station, we had dogs. We were a dog detachment, guarding the perimeter of the air station. Now, we got a shipment of dog food in, and I forget where it came from now. We had been previously buying, I believe, from Nabisco, a dog food. And the dogs were fine on that. They didn't get sick. But when they started to eat this dog food, in a month or two, they were developing paralysis, heart attacks, or heart troubles, and other ailments. Some dogs, the man who was the trainer took home rather than kill them. Put them on Purina dog chow. They recovered.
Huh.
They became healthy. And he brought them back when we had the vet in. Every month the vet came around to check out the dogs.
So let me get this straight now. You're saying we should eat Purina dog food?
Well, that'd be better than eating that delicious white flour that has been devitalized and over-refined.
So they
Now, there's also vitamin E in that flour. Vitamin E is good for your heart, it's good for your skin, it's good for your blood vessels. It prevents blood clots. It also gets rid of them. Now, I sold vitamin E to surgeons in 46 to 48. And no surgeon that used it lost a patient because of a blood clot.
Uh-huh. So you're saying the vitamin E is helpful too? Also.
Yes. And you find that many doctors, particularly heart specialists, would use vitamin E. They know that. And it's much cheaper than going out and buying blood-thinning drugs.
Okay, that takes care of bread, Fred. That's one of the main things that people in our culture eat is a lot of bread.
And another thing you could talk about is sugar.
Okay, let's talk about sugar. There's many kinds of sugar. There's brown sugar.
Dark brown,
There's dark brown. There's molasses. There's
dark molasses.
sugar cane from Hawaii.
Yeah, and then there's beautiful white stuff which doesn't have any life-giving value in it. It just supplies energy.
Okay, which one of those is the closest to being the natural?
The dark brown,
And that comes right from the sugar cane,
yes,
and it's got the least amount of refining in it.
yes.
How do you get a hold of something like that?
Well, you buy it in the supermarket, dark brown sugar. And you can buy grands, which costs a little more than that, and buy that in a health food store, and that would have the sugar naturally. It's unprocessed. They have to process it a bit to get the dark brown sugar.
So what am I gaining by eating this dark brown over
Well,
the white?
you got the
cranberry?
vitamins and minerals in there that your body requires to operate on.
So the white stuff is all bleached out, or what are they?
The good of it is taken out. All you have is the sucrose left.
Now, when they say bleach, what do? They pour chlorine bleach in there with it, or what?
I don't know what they bleach it with, to be very frank with you. I'm not familiar with that. They bleach salt too, you know,
Uh-huh.
so it becomes nice and white.
Yeah. Over in the Mideast with salt, that's still a commodity in certain parts of the Middle East. They use it for trading, but over there they eat large quantities of salt, but it's the natural stuff right out of the sea.
You know, Dr. Fredericks, I don't know if you ever heard of Dr. Fredericks. He was a nutritionist. And Dr. Fredericks talked, he used to be on radio station WOR for a half hour every day when I lived in the New York area. WOR is a New York City station. And he brought out some of these things, and he told in Levy's Bakery, and Levy's was one of his advertisers, they make whole grain breads, they make white flour, and they make half and half and various and all kinds of combinations. The rats and the mice would go to where the whole grain bread is on the racks and eat that first. And if there was nothing else, then they would go and eat the bread that was devitalized and over-refined.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that salt,
But they knew instinctively that's better for them.
so they say they're even taking the nutrients out of salt to bleach it down to...
Well, I think there are trace minerals in salt.
Uh-huh.
And if you ever buy a block of salt, you can get the white block or you can get the ones with the trace minerals in.
Uh-huh.
And the cattle will instinctively go for that has the trace minerals in.
Fred, I was looking at a packet of salt the other day, and it said that it had sugar in it. Traces of sugar in the
No
salt.
kidding.
So they're sweetening up the sugar, or sweetening up the salt so that it's...
So the
Well-
cattle will develop a sweet taste and go for it.
Well, this is in human salt, stuff we eat. It's
Yeah.
on the little package.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, okay, a lot of places, like in bread and stuff, Fred, they put sugar in there. It seems to, I've always heard that some of the hamburger places put sugar in the bread to make it more, people like it better, and they come back to buy it because of the sweetness of the bread.
Right.
So you're saying that too much sugar, too much refined sugar?
Well, we need some sugar, but the refined sugar we don't need. What we need is the sugar that's found in vegetables and fruits,
Okay, ladies and
in
gentlemen,
honey.
today's program is about prevention for health care. Instead of throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at the building dams, Fred, we're talking about turning off the faucet so
Right.
that you don't have to build dams, right?
Dr. I believe it's, what is his name? Dr. Wilfred Schutte, in conjunction with his brother, did a lot of research using vitamin E. And they have a book out, a paperback, the complete book on vitamin E. And people should read that. There's a lot of things, a lot of ailments we develop which would be in remission or gradually be overcome if we use vitamin E.
Okay, Fred, now we're finding out that not only is white bread not good for you, the salt is not good for you, refined sugar is not good for you. What about some of the other reasons, some of the other things that cause health problems in this society?
Well, there's smoking, there's drinking. Now, a glass of wine or something like that could be beneficial. But when you have more than one and you go into drinking a half a dozen or more, that could cause problems later on.
Well, in a state like this, Fred, where we have both tobacco fields and many breweries, got a brewery right up in Chippewa Falls that,
Yes.
that boasts of selling vast amounts of alcohol, and so much so that they're building on an addition.
You know something that's interesting about beer? In Germany, back in the 30s or a little bit beyond, women who were pregnant were urged to drink the German beer because it had nutrients in it which would help them be able to nurse a child.
So what happened to the nutrients? They've been all strained out, or what?
Well, I don't know enough about that, but I do know that that was recommended in Germany.
Uh-huh. So are you suggesting that we all start drinking beer now?
Good beer, if there's a good beer, it probably would help. But you know, today they don't brew beer like they used to. Most places don't age it. Some use chemical additives to age it fast and other flavoring to put the foam on the beer and all that. And those things may not be good for you.
Okay, Fred, with alcohol, though, it's not the beer itself, it's the alcohol that gets you eventually.
Yeah,
It causes a lot of problems in our society.
right.
You can go to any hospital, any treatment center, and you can see the effects of alcohol. You can go into nursing homes and see people that have drank themselves into what's called a wet brain, where they've lost their minds over alcohol. It's not, it's not the grain and the stuff in the alcohol, it's the alcohol.
Well, my former brother-in-law, God have mercy on his soul, used to say this to me. Oh, I drink beer, You can't become an alcoholic on beer. And yet, once he started, he couldn't leave the beer alone until it was all gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate because he was a good worker, a wonderful guy. But once he started drinking, and he'd drink anything that had alcohol in it, and not just beer.
Yeah, it's the alcohol, it's not the beer.
Yeah.
They have non-alcoholic beer now, Fred.
Yes,
It tastes just like the real thing, except you don't have the alcoholic punch to it.
I have drank that a few times too.
No,
And
okay,
if you didn't tell me it didn't have alcohol in it, I wouldn't know.
it's the alcohol in the beer, and in the other liquors that are regulated by the state. In tobacco, it's the nicotine
Yes.
and many other chemicals, carbon monoxide, and a whole host of chemicals in the tobacco. But that's accountable for 400 and some thousand deaths a year, Fred. And that's kind of another, even though on one end we have all the public service announcements and Jocelyn Elder saying to quit smoking, on the other end we're still subsidizing the growing of tobacco in this country,
Very true.
and it's a major industry.
One hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing or
Yeah.
saying.
And I found an ad in paper, in a magazine the other day that said, Philip Morris doesn't want kids to smoke. And there's where it is, Fred. It's three nice young kids with
Yeah.
out playing ball, and it says, Philip Morris doesn't want kids to smoke. And it's part of a Philip Morris propaganda thing to get you to think that they are against pushing cigarettes on the youth. But there's so many older people that are quitting smoking, Fred, that they've got to recruit thousands of youth every
Yeah.
day into that habit. So this is a nice, colorful little ad. Basically, it's from the Philip Morris Company, which, matter of fact, brings Marlboro, the #1 selling cigarette in the world. And in other countries, Fred, they go tooth and nail with the other tobacco companies to get that youth.
Yeah, they give
Start
out
smoking.
free cigarettes to them.
So it says here, it's the law. We do not sell tobacco products to persons under 18.
You know, I was in McDonald's Sunday, and I was in there, and there were a number of young people in there, and I doubt if many of them were 18. Looked like to me they were anywhere from 14 to 18, and all of them were smoking. The older people weren't, but they were.
Well, Fred, once you get one of them young kids hooked, if you can get your hooks in them good enough, they're going to be valuable customers for, well, if you start them at 15, they're going to get into their 50s, maybe even their 60s before the effects hit them. That's when the lung cancer comes in, and the lip cancers, and all the other problems with smoking,
Yeah,
the emphysema.
I've known a few people who have died from lung disease, emphysema, and/or complications, and they were heavy smokers at one time. Now, one man didn't smoke, and I don't know for how many years, but emphysema took him.
So you might get 50 years of addiction out of one customer, Fred. That's a lot of cigarettes, a lot of revenue. You know, they ought to pass a law, Fred, that the tobacco companies have to take care of you on the other end. I mean, they're taking so much interest in getting you hooked. Why don't they take as much interest on the other end when you're laying in a hospital dying of lung cancer?
Well, you know, I've always thought this: if an ailment is brought on or contributed to by a certain product, food, whatever, that some of that ought to go to treat the victims of it.
That's right. Whether it be gambling, alcohol, cigarettes.
Right. And it ought to be set up so that we take care of those people.
I mean, the state is reaping the benefits by taxing those types
Right.
of adventures, but what are they doing to take care of the fallout, the wreckage of those types of behavior?
Yeah, and I've seen in some of our schools literally hundreds of the students outside the school smoking.
Huh.
At lunchtime, you know.
Well, Fred, I got a news release here about tobacco, and it's from the Chippewa Valley Tobacco Free Coalition. And there's a man named Dave Gorlitz coming to the Chippewa Valley, and Dave's name may be familiar. He was the face that appeared on R.J. Reynolds ads for Winston cigarettes. He gave up a 3.5 pack a day smoking habit after a stroke. And Dave now travels around to warn people of the dangers in using tobacco products and how the tobacco industry is selling the number one killer in the world today. Dave will be in the Chippewa Valley March 24th, 5th, and 6th of this month, this year. We'll be appearing in various locations during that time. He'll be available for interviews and things of that nature. And on Thursday the 24th, he'll be at Chippewa Falls Middle School at 8:45 a.m. Chippewa Falls, and he'll be there till 9:45. He'll be at the jail and bail for the American Cancer Society in Chippewa Falls at 10:30. And he'll be at the Emmanuel Lutheran College in Eau Claire at 2 p.m. that day, Thursday. Then on Friday, he'll be at the Long Middle School at 8 a.m. Then at South Middle School at 9:45 a.m. Then at Notre Dame Middle School in Chippewa Falls at 1:45 p.m. on Friday. Then on Saturday, he'll be out at Oakwood Mall at 10 a.m. And then he'll be up at the Cedar Mall in Rice Lake at 1:45 p.m. And his visit is sponsored by the Chippewa Valley Tobacco-Free Coalition, the Chippewa Falls and Eau Claire Schools, Emmanuel Lutheran College, Barron County Tobacco-Free Coalition, and the Barron County American Cancer Society. And hopefully he'll be telling the young people to stay away from that stuff. And
You know, something that I don't understand, young people and older people, with the record that tobacco has and the illnesses it causes, and evidence is all around us, that they refuse to accept it and continue on. Some say, and I've talked to some, they say, well, you got to die from something. So they keep on smoking.
You know, Fred, I've always thought that maybe one way was somebody that's been warned to quit smoking or quit drinking. If they refuse, make them sign a government waiver saying that they're on their own and they will not be put on the public dole to take care of them when they're dying of cancer or whatever. Now, that sounds a little harsh, but they're pretty much guaranteed that something's going to have to happen to them from continuing to abuse those drugs. And by doing so, they're a burden on the rest of society who doesn't smoke or drink.
Yes.
You think that would fly with all of our politicians?
I don't think so, because I know being around politicians at various times in my life, there's a lot of drinking goes on when they're around.
A lot of smoke-filled rooms, too, where they're
Yes.
cutting those deals. Take away the smoke, Fred, and you might see who's in the room. Okay,
That's interesting to hear that.
yeah, Canadian
Right.
doctors. Well, Fred, as usual, our program once again is brought to you by Flavin Pop
Flavin Slop?
from the wonderful world of Flavin. They've been in this country over 100 years now, Fred, and they founded right here in the Chippewa Valley, in
Yeah.
the old country.
Yes.
And, of course, we have the jingle that goes with Flavin Pop. And do you want to sing it, or you want me to?
I don't want to have anything to do with this, Chuck.
All right, well, it goes
I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
It goes Flavin Pop, Flavin Pop. Don't drink slop, drink Flavin Pop. The thinking man's drink. There you go.
You mean that's the man who doesn't think drinks it?
And Fred, you know, if they would quit making that booze up there in Chippewa Falls, we could move this right in there and start producing this, mass producing it.
Yeah, mass producing it, and you wouldn't have anything. All you got to do is turn on your faucet and you get the same thing.
Well, Fred, you should try some of this.
I know.
It's sweeping the nation, and I'm not going to say which one.
I know that's it, and the nation needs cleansing. I know that.
All right.
But it's the floor and everything else that needs the cleansing.
Okay, Fred, now we are taking phone calls. This is a live program, and the number is 839-5067 as usual.
Yeah.
If anyone would like to talk about health issues, Clinton's health care plan, the Canadian health care plan, or smoking, or drinking, or anything along those lines, or anything else that they would like to talk about. So we will be taking phone calls. Fred, before you get into that, another one of your deep subjects over there, I have a announcement about a woman that will be coming into Wisconsin to speak, and it's kind of far away. It's in Madison, but some people might want to go down. And this is with Pro-Life Wisconsin and the nonprofit Pro-Life group, and they're having a special friend come in, and it's called an Evening with Peg Luxick. And she ran for governor, I think, yes, governor of Pennsylvania in 1990, and in the Republican primary, she won 46% of the vote. And the political analysts were shocked because they said that she was totally unknown, just a housewife, mother of 4, and she was only 2 votes per precinct short of a victory. She was 100% pro-life. It just came out of nowhere and almost really rocked the boat for the pro-abortion state treasurer that was running at that time. So she'll be in the In-Towner Best Western Hotel in Madison, 7 p.m. Friday, March 25th, and that's sponsored by Pro-Life Wisconsin.
March 25th, what's that, a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
It's a Friday night.
Friday night.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Fred, what have you got there to discuss with the people?
Well, in the Sunday Leader Telegram, on page 11A, there's a report, Canadian Health System Sickly. And it says the question, I hear that doctors in Canada are being laid off. For what reason? Canadian health care system, touted by some as a model for U.S. reform, is running a fever, according to a report in Modern Healthcare, a healthcare business news magazine published in Chicago. It said that the 25-year-old Canadian system has been able to keep up with runaway costs because of the battered Canadian economy, dwindling federal and provincial tax bases, fraud and overuse by patients, and physicians who institute too many unnecessary tests and procedures. As a result, the provinces and the federal government have begun to take sometimes drastic steps to reorganize and lower costs. Ontario, which contains 38% of the Canadian population and whose health care takes up 1/3 of the province's budget, has been hit hardest. Among the measures which included the phased layoffs of 3,000 hospital workers, 2,300 doctors have had to take a 5% pay cut and be forced to take 27 unpaid days over 3 years. Interesting. Elsewhere in Canada, services have been cut to the bare-bone levels. Thousands of beds have been deactivated. People must be more seriously ill before being admitted to hospitals, and their stays are shorter. In Toronto, virtually all surgery was canceled except for emergencies for 3 weeks.
Huh.
Doesn't sound very good, does it?
No, it doesn't.
And-
They've got their problems too. I've heard several people have died on the waiting list. Of course, they're dying in this country waiting for heart,
Yes.
liver, things too. But, do we really have a health shortage, Fred? Hospitals?
I don't think so.
Look at Eau Claire, we got 2 giant hospitals that continue to build on. We got plenty of bed space available. We got Mayo Clinic is coming here, they're a player in this in Eau Claire there. You know, we don't have a shortage of health care.
We have some of the finest health care in the world. People from all over the world come to us for treatment.
That King Hussein from Jordan came over here. He sure didn't go to
Yes.
Iraq or Iran or Soviet Union. He came to Mayo Clinic. So there's a lot of people you can name that have came to this country for health care. But Fred, there is a shortage for people that are unemployed, the poor. If you're not on welfare, or if you don't have that card, that health, that federal or state health card, you are in trouble. You know, there are people that are totally fell through the cracks and don't have any kind of coverage or any kind of accept. And I don't think I've got the phone number with me. There is a clause in the federal law, Fred, and there is federal funds available.
The Hill-Burton Act will take care of many of those people, but you have to know about it, and it has to, I don't know if you have to apply for it or the hospital or the doctor applies for it, but there are funds that are available for such cases.
Well, if a hospital subscribes to the Hill-Burton Funds Act, they have, on demand, they have to give you health care. Those are federal funds, and those are available if you don't have any other source. So ask your legislator or call your hospital and see if they do have what's called Hill-Burton funds available if you do not have any other way of getting any health care. But Fred, the whole system is not broke.
No.
If you got the money or if you got a good health care plan, you can't beat the coverage. in
Very
this
true.
country. All right, Fred, well, you know, coming up, it's going to be tick season again, Fred. It's right around the corner. And you know, we have a serious problem in this part of the country with what's called Lyme disease. And it's not going to get any better. I've got a little map here that shows the general distribution of Lyme disease in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And it looks like the thing started right in Hudson and just spread from there, but it looks like it's covering most of the state now. But them little, if you've ever seen a tick, them things, I've got a picture of them here, and Chris and Cliff Economac are going to get on the camera. And there are wood ticks right there on the bottom. A regular old dogwood tick there. And, whoops, there. Okay, the one on the bottom is just your plain old wood tick, Fred, that all the dogs get and we get in our hair and everything else. But that little booger on the top there, Fred, that is the little deer tick that has the Lyme disease, carries the disease.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a full-grown tick at the top and a full-grown one at the bottom. So you can see the difference in the size. And that'll tip you off right away, Fred, that you might have, or you do have a deer tick, but you might also have a problem with Lyme disease. And then, of course, there is a way of telling on there's a little picture right there of a guy that got it. Oops, guy, see there? Kind of a red spot that develops on your body where you've been bitten by the deer tick, and then it spreads from that red spot. And the middle of that spot will eventually turn white while the ring continues to get bigger on the outside, continues to spread. And it's fairly obvious when you get it. And there are all kinds of side effects that go along with that disease, Fred. But
I know somebody who's got Lyme disease, and they've been having all kinds of problems.
Antibiotics will help it, Fred, but it seems to come back, too. And I think they're in the process of experimenting with a new Lyme disease vaccine. I don't know if it's ready for humans yet, but I think they're experimenting with in animals. So hopefully it'll be right around the corner and they will have one for humans, because it attacks the joints, it makes you feel like you've got real bad arthritis in the joints, and you don't feel up to par, right? You always feel like you're about 70% or 80% instead of 100%. It's really debilitating, and right now I guess massive doses of antibiotics will help alleviate that. But don't let it go. If you see those symptoms, or you get a big red patch on your body somewhere from that tick, get in right away and get the thing diagnosed. And so the longer you go, the worse off you are. Okay, Fred.
Yes.
So, and you know, some dogs and deer and stuff carry them ticks over the winter time and bring them on through to the next cycle, into the next season, which we're going into here fairly shortly.
I know when we lived out on the Old River Road, when we first come to Eau Claire, my youngest daughter used to pick ticks off a big St. Bernard that was a house or two down the road, and he was covered with those ticks almost. She used to pick them off and burn them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the old ones. Then all of a sudden, everyone started talking about deer ticks. They must have always been with us, Fred, but all of a sudden the disease cropped up, and we started getting it. Humans started getting it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's got something to do with radiation itself, Fred. These diseases are cropping up all over the world all of a sudden. AIDS, and Lyme disease, and hantavirus. Maybe it's got something to do with all the radiation and nuclear tests they did. And maybe it tore down our immune system to some extent, where these diseases that probably have always been with us ever since the beginning of time now are able to attack the body and get a foothold because of our weaker immune system. That's just a theory I've got, Fred. I'll be writing a paper on it eventually. Okay. What do you got there, Fred?
Well, we've got a few things here. There's an article in the New American Magazine, and that's of March 7th, and it says Clinton sells out on POW MIAs, and Vietnam veterans Senator John McClain and Kerry, I think he's from Massachusetts, bury the POW-MIA issue, and quite a few officers oppose doing business with Vietnam, letting them off the hook. And well-known officers, some congressmen, admirals from Stockdale down, generals, captains, colonels, lieutenant colonels, quite a few. Rather interesting. And doing business with Vietnam, we're doing it with a communist country who hasn't relented in imposing upon its people communism and or getting rid of any vestige of freedom there is or any opposition to the communist regime. And we shouldn't be putting them on trading with them and building them up. My humble opinion.
Well, Fred, I think they kind of let the floodgates open there on that deal, didn't they? Didn't Clinton withdraw the embargo and open up the gates?
Yes.
So now it'll be business as usual, even though over 2,000 Americans are unaccounted for. And
well, apparently they're not interested in those Americans who are unaccounted for, and that's a betrayal of the American servicemen. Bringing those POWs and MIAs back should have been a primary goal of our politicians, our State Department. Instead, they buried the issue.
You know, some of the rhetoric said that some of the prisoners ended up in Soviet prisons. Well, you think about it, Fred, other than a lot of hooey and a lot of big talk, what has the Russians produced as far as evidence to either back up those claims or refute them, you know?
Well, I think that some of those, and I was told this by an officer who served in Vietnam, he believes that some of the men who had skills and education that could be used went to the Soviet Union.
I see. Well, Fred, we've had all kinds of phone calls in the other room, but they don't seem to be getting out this way. I don't know what's going on. Either there are a lot of people that want to call in, but then when they don't, they're afraid to come on the air. But I assure you, Fred, and you'll attest to this, you will not bite if somebody calls, right?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Now, Fred, remember earlier in the program...
I might even wish him a happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, I was wondering, when is that anyway?
The 17th.
That's Thursday, right?
Yes.
Okay.
They even got a shamrock here.
Oh, yeah. Are they going to have the march in Boston this year or what?
Well, there's some, I think the homosexuals want to march in the parade, and the organizers of the parade don't want to have them march in, cancel the parade.
Well,
I don't know.
They've been marching for 40...
I haven't heard anything about that lately.
They've been marching 40, 50 years. They're going to cancel out a tradition like that? Well, anyway, Fred, if you remember earlier in the program, I was talking about a Peg Luxick coming to Madison. Well, I found the other half of the letter I got in the mail, and the reason she's coming is because there's a pro-life campaign workshop being held in Madison that day. And Steve King, past chairman of the Republican Party of Wisconsin, and Peg Luxick will both be presenting workshops down there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the reason why she was down there. And it's a pro-life campaign training seminar to educate pro-life people about the fundamentals of running for public office, managing and staffing a campaign, participating more directly in the legislative process, and defending a total protection pro-life campaign strategy. And what we've been saying, Fred, is...
And she's going to be here on the 25th?
No, they'll both be in Madison for the...
on the 25th?
Right, that Friday.
Yeah.
And
what time does that thing start?
8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the In-Towner.
Oh, 8:30. Boy,
That's
kind of early.
Yeah, so you just about have to drive.
It takes at least 3 hours to get down there, maybe a little bit more.
Probably want to go down there the night before.
Yeah.
But that's what that's all about, Fred, and I guess it goes in line with the pro-life people finally waking up, getting up off the cement and off the picket lines and getting into the political process and hopefully making a dent in politics. Instead of giving all their money to the courts in the form of fines and levies for their picketing efforts, they can give that money to good pro-life candidates.
Well, we got to become involved in this, because Planned Parenthood and its supporters, the people for free choice, etc., they're active politically. And although their numbers may be small, they're very vocal.
Well, I think they learned, Fred, that you can just do so much by picketing, and you can do a lot more by spreading the money around and getting people elected.
Yes.
And in that vein, they're a few years ahead of the pro-life movement. The pro-life movement's growing up. It's 21 years old this year, and now they're coming of age. Okay, Fred, before I get into my next piece here, we'll go see what you had there next.
Well, you go ahead there.
Well, I didn't really have anything to
Here's a little article here on Crown for Elders, and this refers to Dr. Jocelyn Elders in the New York Times Magazine of January the 30th. General Elder, Jocelyn Elders has brought her safe-sex bouquet, condoms in a mock floral arrangement, from Arkansas to Washington, displays it proudly on her desk. Elders' critics have given her the sobriquet of Condom Queen, a designation which she embraces with synaptically unsound enthusiasm. If I could get every young person who's engaged in sex to use a condom in the United States, I would wear a crown with a condom on it. I would, she said, unquote. And that, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. Because just think of the defective ones that were distributed through the schools and how many pregnancies resulted from that in Arkansas. They had an explosion as far as sexual promiscuity was concerned, and in teenage pregnancies in Arkansas.
Well, they call them STDs, Fred, sexually transmitted diseases, and they all different categories went up in Arkansas during her tenure down there. And so now she's going to try and do that to the whole United States. She wants to legalize drugs, stop everybody from smoking, and then hand out condoms in ever-increasing numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, perhaps, Fred, she owns some stock in condom companies. The way she's been pushing them things, you'd think that was the only thing there was to stop the spread of AIDS, and she thinks condoms is the answer.
Well, I had some friends who used them, and their partners or wives became pregnant, and they never had sex without.
Yeah, they do leak, Fred. About 20% of them do.
Yeah. On December the 4th, the French government announced it would reduce the price of condoms sold in that country. Previously, condoms had sold for about 55 cents a piece. Through the use of government subsidies, the unit price was cut to 17 cents. This adjustment was made to encourage young people to use condoms. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, hopefully somebody will file a lawsuit, Fred, when they get some kind of disease from using them things. Okay, Fred. You know, we've been discussing Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah.
And recently there was a full-page ad that was put out by the Anti-Defamation League, and that was in several newspapers around the country.
Yesterday's paper.
Yeah, and there was also in yesterday's Leader Telegram. Was it yesterday or
Yesterday.
a week ago?
Yesterday.
Okay. Saturday or Sunday.
Sunday.
All right. And anyway, it looked like he was backpedaling on that issue, and he was not going to attack Christians and blacks that don't agree with him and Jews, but according to the Anti-Defamation League, he's going right at her again, Fred.
Yeah.
Stirring people up, and he's got some of his assistants that really attacked the Pope really heavy here in one of their speeches, called him a cracker. That's a southern.
Anti-Defamation League?
No,
that?
one of Farrakhan's
Oh.
people called the Pope a cracker.
Oh.
That's kind of a derogatory slang word from the South for redneck or whatever you want to call him. So he's still beating the drum of hatred, Fred, and it's just what I've been trying to tell people on the show, Fred, is there are minority people that are racist that hate other races. Like blacks can hate Koreans and hate them and with passion and be racist towards them, or they can hate whites. Whites can hate blacks. You know,
True.
it's not just white people that are racist against other people. It comes in all shades and colors, forms.
I'll never forget when I lived in the New York area, and this was prior to January of 1965. I came out here in January of 65. And in Harlem, the store owners went on strike up there. They wouldn't do business with minority-owned businesses that hired Cubans and or Puerto Ricans, even though they were black.
Yeah. So what did you learn from that?
Well, they wanted the jobs themselves. So that would be a form of discrimination toward the Cuban and or the Puerto Rican, even though that person might be as black as they are.
Okay, Fred, another thing that's coming down the road here, getting off of racism, because there's plenty of that to go around all over the world. So we'll change, shift gears here a little bit. There's something happening right now. It's called the Fairness in Broadcasting Act. It's going to be
Yes.
It's going to be introduced, and hopefully this won't affect us, Fred, here on public access. But people like Rush Limbaugh and any number of national and regional figures on radio and TV stations could be affected to where they have to give kind of the other side of the story on, or offer equal time or access or whatever, Fred. I don't know exactly what it is, but you being the expert on that, maybe you can fill the people in on what exactly this Fairness in Broadcasting Act is about.
Well, it won't apply to people like Phil Donahue and Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings, and so forth. It only applies to the conservative voices in on the airwaves or in TV. And there is not one conservative on TV. Not one.
So that, from what I understand,
They'll force them to give the same amount of time to somebody else that they might be talking about.
So ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN are exempt from this law.
Well, more or less. You see, if you go on the Phil Donahue show and you are not, you don't fit his mold, he ridicules you and does everything to make you look like an idiot. If you ever watch some of his programs, you probably know that.
Well, I think they are exempt, Fred, because the people that are drawing up this bill are saying that, yes, we can trust those people to be fair. Well, you know, they aren't that fair. It's lopsided left-wing propaganda most of the time. Now you have the public stations like Channel 2 and 10 in this area, which are financed with federal funds, and it's very hard to break into those if you have any kind of conservative programming.
Well, they don't
almost
want you either.
That's on radio and TV. I think there's 8 or 9 stations in Wisconsin that are set up that way that are pretty much suppositories for the left wing. And the taxpayers foot the bill for that. But thank God, Fred, we have public access, or even with the people that control public access, and they can even stop people from calling in like they're calling in now. The phone's ringing off the hook, Fred. We don't get any of those calls, so I'd like for you to call 834-3908 after the program and let me know why you're not getting through, because the phone is ringing off the hook and we're not getting any of those calls in here to the studio. So if you're having a problem getting on the air, would you please call me afterwards and tell me why you weren't allowed to be on the air today? 'cause there seems to be a problem, Fred. The
Mm.
phone has just been ringing like crazy, but we're not getting any of the calls in here.
Well, there's another thing here, and which is interesting, and in the Wanderer, which just came out, number 2.
Mm.
The Wanderer, which I got the paper today, and that's a Catholic paper from St. Paul. Employers and employees, and this is Washington, decorate their workspaces with religious symbols or pictures, become targets of religious harassment lawsuits if the proposed guidelines drawn by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission goes into effect. In a brave new world of EEOC standards, a crucifix or holy picture indicates religious harassment just as much as a pin-up girl constitutes sexual harassment.
Well, Fred, we
Might as well take the call.
I think we've got a call here.
Good.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, getting back to what you were talking about in the fairness in broadcasting.
Yeah.
You were saying that Donahue is the left-wing show. I don't know. I have watched his show a fair number of times, and obviously you two haven't. Not trying to attack you or anything, but his show would be what you'd call a talk show, and he doesn't on his guests like you propose that he does.
We see that regularly, and we've watched them harass people there. And some people, for example, pro-life people or those who disapprove of homosexuality, are made to look like fools by Donahue.
No, I understand what you're saying, but if you would look at what is actually going on, Donahue would be a person who would respect the pro-life or anti-homosexual. It is the audience that usually takes over. I mean, if you watch his show, he also has a show with it's called Posner Donahue on CNBC.
Yes,
I don't know
I've
if you've ever
seen it.
Yeah.
But he will oftentimes have, like, for example, last night he did. His guest was someone who was towards the pro-life movement. He's not trying to silence them. If anything, he's just trying to let them be heard and let the audience take over. Now, if you want to call it, it's the audience that usually attacks the guest. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Earlier in Donahue's career, he was more active on this stuff, but now that he's a multimillionaire, he doesn't have to be so aggressive. He can let the audience do it.
You think that of your hostility towards Donahue stems from the fact that he seems to gang up on the Catholic religion or Christian religion a fair amount?
Donahue's a backslidden Catholic. If he's got a problem with being a Catholic, that's his problem.
No. He doesn't have a problem with being a Catholic. He just tends to anger the church because he doesn't silence issues on the preachers, molestation, whatever. You know what I'm talking about now?
Does anything to make them look bad. You're right.
Now, Fred is of that persuasion, and he's probably studied Donahue.
I've watched Donahue a lot more than most people do, probably, and I wouldn't tell anybody to watch his program unless to expose them.
Well, do you find that? I mean, is there a problem with him showing, bringing out these issues?
Oh, I think he could bring out other issues without taking the side of the homosexuals and the anti-religion people.
Okay, but I don't know if you noticed he has done some shows where he tries to show the positive aspects of the religion.
Very, very, very few. Very, very few.
Well, I don't know. It's tough to say. It's probably the ratings, and he gets better ratings from.
Oh, he gets ratings, sure.
Yeah,
people tune in and they like sensational stuff. They like oddball stuff.
Another thing about
Bring
Donahue,
on the homosexuals and have them sitting up there with little or no clothes on. Oh, sure. A lot of people are going to tune in that, and they're going to give them a rating. That's great.
Could I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm not personally a homosexual person, but has a homosexual person ever offended you in some way that you
Yes,
have?
they have. Yes, they have.
How?
They propositioned me a number of times, particularly when I was in the service and shortly after that.
Have you ever propositioned a female?
No,
Are you currently married? I'm sorry, I don't.
I have not.
Okay, don't cut me off. I'm not going to say anything.
No, I was gonna make a remark about Donahue Posner. Posner was a propagandist for the old Soviet Union. When he wore his welcome out there, that's when he hooked up with Donahue. But he still pushes the communist line.
That is not true. But anyway, getting back to what Fred said.
Yes, it is true. This is my program, and it's true because I said it.
But if
and the other thing is, Donahue owns a piece of the action of the Rush Limbaugh program that's on television. So Donahue's just a capitalist, you know. He's looking to make a buck, and he's making a buck off Rush Limbaugh right now.
well, is that going against what Rush Limbaugh has to say? I mean, Rush Limbaugh should applaud him then, correct?
Evidently, Rush doesn't seem to care where the money comes from.
I guess not. I agree with you there. But just, I'm not trying to stay on the side of anybody, but just in the same way that males proposition females, homosexuals proposition males. No, I don't think it's nearly as widespread. But I mean, couldn't you just have said no and walked away? I mean, I'm sure they did it.
Well, I did.
Okay,
I did.
I mean, is that something?
I was offended by it because of the number of times it happened.
Well, I'm sure.
And some of the people I knew, and they kept bugging me.
Well,
And they knew that I was not interested in that lifestyle, but that didn't stop them from doing it.
well, maybe they were trying to play a joke on you. I don't know, but
That's some joke.
It built character in you, Fred.
but you can't make generalizations on what small amount of information you've acquired. I mean, obviously, this was how many people? Maybe.
I would say about 15 to 20.
Okay, so you're going to take that and generalize that against, and
It must have been
the
the
hate-
uniform, Fred.
Oh.
Were you in the Navy then?
I wore a naval uniform, but it also happened to me when I was out of the service.
Huh. What
But
city was that
that's
in?
neither here or there. What?
What city was that in?
That was in New York City. Standing on the street looking in a store window.
That's what you get with those open immigration laws, Fred. Anything could come.
No,
Now-
the man looked very respectable, and he talked very well too. He talked like a very intelligent individual.
It probably is, Fred, because as we've talked about before in this program, sin is sin in whatever flavor it comes in, Fred.
Mhm.
Homosexuality is just as much is no more of a sin than lying.
Mm.
They're just all sins, Fred, and when you're in the world, that's what you get. Well, thanks for calling in, caller, and we're glad that somebody finally got through because the phone was ringing quite heavily there. And try again next time because we'll be on again next week, Fred, at
Yes.
9 p.m.
Yes.
Right here on Channel 11.
And now
Public access.
the Conservative Corner will be on at 6 p.m., so tune
When?
in on Thursday,
This
6
Thursday?
p.m., yes,
Right here on Public Access
the
Channel 11.
17th.
The only place where you can still get freedom of speech, Fred.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did have a problem getting through today, once again, my number is 834-3908. You can leave a message on my answering machine if you want to tell us what problems you had with getting through today, because we are trying out some new operators in there, and possibly they didn't know how to channel the phone calls in here.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to thank you, and we'll see you again next week right here on the Cow Report. I've been your host, Chuck Lee. Good day, and have a nice afternoon.
Good afternoon.